Hey everyone, buckle up, because we are diving headfirst into some serious Canadian political drama. It's huge news, folks. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, well, he's expected to resign.
Yeah.
And the political scene, let me tell you, it is absolutely buzzing with speculation.
It's a pivotal moment for Canada, for sure. This isn't just a simple change at the top. This has the potential, I think, to really reshape the country's entire direction, you know? And I'm talking impacts on the global stage, too. Think trade relationships, international diplomacy even. It's a lot.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so to get into the nuts and bolts of this whole thing, we got to look at what actually led to this. I mean, this was unexpected, right? This resignation.
Yeah, there's been this mounting pressure on Trudeau, and it's not just from, like, the opposition, you know, it's from within his own Liberal Party, too.
Right.
There have been rumblings, calls for him to step down, and, well, the sources have been following. They're saying internal disagreements in a sense that things were just, like, stuck played a big part in his decision.
Right, and then there's the big thing nobody's really talking about, the influence coming from south of the border. It's pretty obvious that certain, well, figures, especially former U.S. President Donald Trump, they haven't exactly been quiet about, their criticisms of Canada, and especially of Trudeau himself.
Yeah, and I think it's important to acknowledge that, the political climate, it's gotten so much more, how do I say it, volatile in recent years, and that has definitely, without a doubt, contributed to this whole tension surrounding Trudeau's leadership.
Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks here. What happens next? It really feels like we're all standing on the edge of like a political earthquake.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah. One possibility is that Trudeau will choose to prorogue Parliament. That basically means, hitting pause on all parliamentary activity, everything just stops. It's not very common. It's usually seen as a way to, buy some time, regroup, that sort of thing. It would give the Liberal Party a chance to pick a new leader and figure out their next steps.
So are we talking like weeks, months? How long would this delay everything?
Well, the experts I've been reading, they're predicting that if prorogation does happen, Parliament probably wouldn't be back in session until like late March at the very earliest. But there's another scenario, one that could speed things up, like a lot.
Let me guess, this is where the opposition parties come in, right? Especially the NDP, the new Democratic Party led by Jagmeet Singh. They've made it pretty clear that they'd like to see a new person in charge.
Exactly. The NDP, they've already said they're ready to start a no-confidence vote as soon as Parliament is back. And if they win that vote, well, that could trigger snap elections, meaning the whole country would be thrown into like a crazy whirlwind of campaigning way earlier than the scheduled elections in October.
Wow, okay, so that would definitely shake things up. And what about the Liberals' alliance with the NDP? That would be override.
Yeah.
Because that's been a big part of how Trudeau's government has been able to get things done, passing policies. Like, think about the expansion of Canada's universal healthcare system. That was huge.
For sure, that alliance, it was definitely a major factor in their success. Remember when they brought in that dental and pharmaceutical coverage? I mean, that was a major achievement for them. But now, with Trudeau potentially stepping down and the, looming possibility of snap elections, it's all up in the air. Everything's uncertain.
Okay, so what does this all mean for the NDP? They want Trudeau out, yeah, but snap elections. Wouldn't that introduce a whole new level of uncertainty and maybe even risk the agenda they share with the Liberals?
It's a gamble, definitely. They're basically hoping that changing leadership will create more stability in the long run, and that it'll let them keep pushing for the things they want to get done.
Okay, but hold on. Into all of this chaos walks, well, another major player, the Conservative Party, led by Pierre Poilievre. I have a feeling they're seeing all of this and thinking, this is our chance.
Oh, yeah. They are definitely not shying away from the opportunity, not even a little bit. Poilievre, he's been very vocal. He's criticized Trudeau, the Liberals, and he's actively promoting his own vision for Canada, which, well, it's very different from how the government's doing things now.
And Poilievre himself, he's a bit of he's a controversial figure. Some people even compare him to Trump because of his views on certain things. Yeah. It's definitely sparked a lot of debate among Canadians. A lot of people are concerned.
Yeah, his positions have definitely gotten attention, and, they've definitely generated some strong reactions, let's just say that. One of the big ones, his ideas about changes to Canada's healthcare system, specifically his suggestions about privatization, that's become a major point of contention. People are not happy about it.
Canada's universal healthcare system is, sacred to Canadians. It's deeply valued, and any talk about privatization, yeah, that's going to be met with a lot of resistance. When I was reporting for the Daily News podcast, it was clear. I mean, so many Canadians see universal health care as like a fundamental right. It's part of their national identity. It's a big deal.
Oh, for sure. It's a deeply ingrained principle in Canadian society, and I think any major changes to the system, it's going to be a defining issue in this election. Whether it happens sooner or later, it's going to be a huge topic.
So, just to recap, the Liberals, they're kind of scrambling right now trying to figure out what to do. The NDP, they're facing a tough decision. Do they go for it or not? And the Conservatives, well, they're ready to pounce. It's like watching a political thriller play out in real time.
Definitely a lot of moving pieces, that's for sure. And the outcome? No one knows. But there's another layer to all of this that makes it even more complicated, I think. Alliances.
Ah, yes, of course. The ever-changing world of political partnerships. Things are about to get interesting. Are we talking about the Bloc Québécois, that regional party focused on Quebec's interests?
That's the one. The Bloc, they've always been kind of a wild card in Canadian politics, and who they decide to side with, especially if they go with the Conservatives, well, that could totally shift the balance of power.
So imagine this, the Conservatives, led by Poilievre, and they join forces with the Bloc Québécois. That would be a serious challenge to the Liberals and the NDP.
It's definitely something to think about. It just highlights how much is at stake in this upcoming election, whenever it happens.
Welcome back. Before we went to, well, I guess we didn't go to break, but we were talking about a possible major change in Canada's political scene, right? And you were right. The impact of this power shift, it goes way beyond just Canada.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they don't really get how important Canada is on the world stage. I mean, it's not always, making headlines or anything, but Canada has this history of being a strong voice for diplomacy, for working together. Right. Think about it. Canada is involved in so many peacekeeping missions, those international agreements about climate change, and their commitment to global development. These are all areas where Canada's been like a really active and influential player.
And a lot of Canadians, they see that international role as a big part of who they are as a country. It's like being a responsible member of the global community, working with other nations to tackle the big challenges we all face together.
But a government that's, more conservative, especially if they align with some of the things we've seen from, like Trump, for example, that could mean a move away from those traditional partnerships and commitments.
So are we talking about like an isolationist approach?
Yeah.
Less involvement with international organizations, more focus on just what's happening inside Canada.
It's possible, yeah. And if that happened, it could have this ripple effect on a whole bunch of global issues. Climate change, international trade deals, global security cooperation. A change in Canada's position could have some serious consequences.
Okay, so let's bring it back to something we talked about earlier. Healthcare. This seems to be like a really big sticking point in this potential power shift.
Oh, definitely. And it makes sense, right? Canada's universal healthcare system, it's such a big part of the country's identity. They're proud of it, and Canadians are very, very protective of it. It came up a lot when you were reporting for the Daily News podcast, right?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
I talk to so many Canadians who see universal healthcare as like a basic right, not something you have to earn or pay extra for. It's the heart of their social safety net, the system that makes sure everyone can get the medical care they need, no matter how much money they make.
It's essential, yeah. And the Liberal NDP coalition, they made expanding healthcare a big priority. But Poilievre and the Conservatives, they're suggesting something completely different.
Yeah, that's right. They've been talking about adding privatization to the healthcare system. And that has a lot of Canadians feeling anxious and, well, it started a lot of debate.
It would be a huge change for sure. And people are worried about what could happen. Critics are saying it could create this two-tiered system where if you've got the money, you get better care, faster care. But if you don't, well, you're stuck with longer wait times and fewer options.
It reminds me of some of the problems we see in the U.S. healthcare system, where millions of people struggle to get affordable healthcare.
Exactly. And that's what's freaking out a lot of Canadians. They're afraid that privatizing healthcare would undermine that whole idea of universality, and you'd end up with a system that benefits the wealthy and leaves the most vulnerable people behind.
So we're not just talking about a change in government, right?
Yeah.
This is potentially a total reshaping of Canadian society.
That's a good way to put it. This election, whether it's in a few months or later this year, it's about more than just picking a leader. It's about deciding what kind of country Canada wants to be, what values they care about most, and how they take care of their people.
It really feels like, I don't know, a turning point in Canadian history.
It is, yeah. And whatever happens, it's going to have a huge impact, not just within Canada, but potentially on Canada's role in the world, too.
All right, so we've covered a lot, from Trudeau stepping down to the Conservatives maybe taking over and what might happen with healthcare in Canada. But there's another big part of this we need to look at, right? What could a Conservative government mean for social programs? What about environmental policy? Let's dig into those questions next. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So we've been talking about the potential impacts of this, potential conservative shift in Canadian politics. And I think it's important to remember that behind all the political stuff, all the debates and campaigns, there are actual people whose lives are going to be affected by whatever decisions are made.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's so easy to get caught up in the drama of elections and the big arguments about, different political ideas. But in the end, politics is about people. It's about the choices we make as a society and how those choices affect our lives, our communities, our future,
Right, exactly. And when we talk about the potential consequences of all this political change, one area that we really need to pay attention to is social programs. Canada has a pretty strong social safety net, right? Think universal health care, unemployment insurance, pensions for older folks, and all sorts of different social assistance programs.
And those programs, they're not just, words on a page in a budget somewhere. They're lifelines for millions of Canadians. They represent this, commitment to social justice, this idea that everyone deserves a basic level of security and support no matter what their situation is.
From what I've seen reporting for the Daily News podcast, these programs, they're absolutely essential for the people who need them most. Seniors, people with disabilities, families who are struggling to get by. They depend on these programs.
They do. They really do. They provide that crucial safety net that helps prevent people from falling into poverty, They make sure people have at least a basic standard of living. But one thing I've been hearing, is that a government that's more conservative, more focused on cutting spending, they might try to reduce funding for these programs.
Yeah, that's definitely a fear that a lot of Canadians have.
Yeah.
Especially the people who rely on these programs, They're worried that if the government changes its priorities, they might lose the support that they need just to survive, let alone thrive.
And it's a valid concern. It's not just about the material support these programs provide, It also kind of raises this deeper philosophical question about the role of government. What is our responsibility to each other? What do we believe in?
Right. It's about what we value as a society. Do we believe that everyone should be responsible for themselves no matter what? Or do we believe in, working together, helping each other out?
Exactly. Canada's social safety net, it reflects that belief in shared responsibility, this commitment to making sure that everyone has a fair chance at a decent life. And any changes to those programs, well, it could signal a big shift in values, a move away from that idea that we're all in this together.
And those values, they're also reflected in Canada's environmental policies, right?
Yeah.
They've been a leader, a global leader in the fight against climate change. They've pushed for strong international agreements, and they've put policies in place to try to reduce, greenhouse gas emissions.
That's true. Canada has really been pushing for a global shift towards a more sustainable future, investing in renewable energy, promoting energy efficiency, setting these ambitious goals for reducing emissions.
But I've also been hearing from people who are worried that, the Conservative government, especially if they're, skeptical about climate change, they might change course, maybe roll back environmental regulations and focus more on economic growth, even if it means harming the environment.
That's a definite possibility, and it's something that a lot of Canadians are really concerned about, especially younger people who see climate change as this huge threat. They're worried that a change in policy could, hurt Canada's progress on climate change and make them look bad on the world stage.
It's a reminder that the stakes in this election, they're really high. It's not just about who's in charge. It's about the direction of the country, the values, the vision for the future, all of it.
Absolutely. Canadians need to be informed, engaged, and they need to make their voices heard. This is a huge moment for Canada. And the decisions that are made now, they're going to have a big impact for a long time.
This has been a really fascinating look at Canadian politics. Thank you so much for joining us today as we try to figure out this complicated and, constantly changing situation. And to our listeners, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay engaged. What happens next in Canada, it matters, and everyone's voice counts.